So, Omari, the Knicks are having an influence apparently on the Jets. This was Aaron Glenn being asked about the Knicks winning it all yesterday.
The Knicks, go Knicks, go Knicks. I tell you what, that was beautiful. Here's the thing that I thought was so beautiful about the way that it operated. And I don't know it for sure, but I think those guys were down in a number of games that they've played. And you think about how they operated in that first quarter and second quarter. Then that third quarter, man, it was a totally different team. And you hear me, and you probably heard me say this word before, but competitive stamina. And that is something that those men showed throughout that whole series. And that's a real thing. It's a real thing. It's something that I've talked to our guys about since phase one, to be honest with you. That's something that we're working on. And the way you do that is, me as a coach, I have to make sure I create that in practice. And it's hard to do it in OTAs because the physical part of it. But once we go to training camp, you can bet your ass that we're going to work on competitive stamina because those Knicks, those guys showed it.
Competitive stamina, something the Jets are focusing in on. Is that feasible for the 2026 Jets to have some of that competitive stamina that the Knicks showed?
Absolutely. And I think that if where the Jets are right now, you're coming off of, years. The Knicks were in the same spot, man. The Jets haven't made the playoffs in 15 years. The Knicks were right in that spot. You look back to 2019, the Jets actually had better odds in the preseason to win the championship than the Knicks. It's all about getting those right hires. And a lot of us do feel that Darren Muji is the right man for the job. The jury is still out on Aaron Glenn. But again, you look at Brandon Stevens, he's been having, and you could take this for what you want, he's been having a solid OTAs and minicamp. He's going to be competing with AZ Thomas. You look at AD Mitchell, he's going to be competing because we hope that Omar Cooper Jr. and some of those other younger guys are going to push him to compete as well too. So there's competition all around the roster. You look at running back too. You look at the third linebacker spot. You could even look at the safety spot outside of Minka Fitzpatrick. So there are areas on this roster where nothing's going to be guaranteed. So I think he's doing a great job of establishing the base that competitive stamina is going to be our thing. And if you want to get on the field, you're going to have to compete. So, and again, one of my biggest knocks on the Saleh nucleus or the Saleh personnel that he got in, I just thought that at times they were mentally weak. And one thing, I think the superpower of the New York Knicks was that they just didn't give up. Like, they just kept fighting. They always fight. And honestly, they even conditioned us as fans because it even sounds delusional, right, Jake? You're like, if they're getting blown out by 25, what are you saying to yourself? Let's just get it down to 10, or let's get it to 12 at the fourth quarter, and we're right in striking distance. So the Knicks not only believe in themselves, they also condition the fan base to believe that if it's close in the fourth quarter, they're going to get it done.
Well, it's amazing because in all the NBA Finals games the Knicks played, they were down by at least 10 after the first quarter. And I made a joke after the first quarter of Game 5. I'm like, the bad news is the Knicks are down by at least 10 or more for the fifth straight game. The good news is the Knicks are down by 10 or more for the fifth straight game. And, sure enough, they get down 16 on the road in the Game 5, and they come all the way back and obviously win. I think a big issue for the Jets over the years, and you alluded to this, anytime they face any sort of adversity, they fold. And if you're ever going to turn it around, you need to have guys that can overcome adversity, because adversity is going to strike. And it's how you handle it that determines whether or not you're actually going to make something of your season.
Yeah. And again, we're going to keep, there's going to be a lot of Knick correlations here because you think about it, the Knicks, when they first came here, they had to get that stink of losing off. The We Hear Knicks, that really got things in motion. And then when Brunson came, it just put things into overdrive. But remember, they lost the semifinals in Miami, and then the back-to-back years getting eliminated by the Pacers. So again, they've had, it's been a slow build. It's been a slow build. So this thing isn't going to happen overnight. So you're thinking this is year 2 of the Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji regime. This is going to be a building block, and what the one thing that I'm hopeful about right now, and again, this is hope season. I'm hopeful that he's been able to bring in some guys that match his personality and match his and match his, I would say, personality of how he wants to be on the field. I think he inherited a lot a lot of players from the previous regime. Now, while they were talented individually, I don't think they ever meshed well as a team and didn't really contribute to winning. So I think this year is going to be it's going to feel a lot like, hopefully it could feel a lot like those We Hear Knicks.
I think the biggest thing they have to do from a Jet standpoint, if they want to try and copy the Nick blueprint, is like Gino is Julius Randle. Like, just we need to raise the floor and get back to being a respectable franchise. Like, this team needs to play meaningful games. They need to be not looked at as a joke. That's what Tom Thibodeau came in and provided. Obviously, it's different from a Jet lens because Glenn's already been here and he's on the hot seat after how bad year one was. But you got to just hope that he learned from year one and hired a much better staff, and this team's in a better spot, because the idea that they're just going to flip a switch and be champions right away, that's not what the Knicks did. They built towards this over several years.
Yeah, they did. And then sometimes I kind of, and I know that that it's not, the reality is this is year two, but I'm almost looking like this at it that like it's year one, because what did the Knicks do when they first brought over Tibbs? They signed a bunch of guys on hungry veterans that fit Tibbs's style, but they were all on 1 year deals. You think about Nerlens Noel, you think about Reggie Bullock, you think about Elfrid Payton. Now, if you already said that Geno Smith could be the Julius Randle, but then you got David Onyemata on a 1 year deal. You got Demario Davis. You got Dylan Parham. These are a lot of scrappy guys that, came from other organizations. Now again, Demario's had some winning. There's not really any championship DNA, but there are guys that are here on 1 year deal, and that if they want to stay in the league, they know that they're going to have to perform. So, we could dig deep, and there are a lot of correlations and there's some similarities there. So I think that this is a good base point, and I think, I think that Glenn has enough in his arsenal of his players to where that there aren't going to be any excuses. But I just think that it's much easier to relate to the locker room when those guys fit your mentality.
The Jake Asman Show is now presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a daily fantasy app made simple. Just pick more or less on your favorite players' projections and build your lineup in seconds. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. And PrizePicks is already offering NFL futures, including futures for New York Jets players. Take a look at the lineup that you see on the screen. Garrett Wilson, more than 4.5 reception touchdowns. David Bailey, he's going to have at least 7 sacks his rookie year. Arvell Reese, almost a Jet. I think he'll have at least 3 sacks in his rookie year with the Giants. That is a 3-pick power play, $10 to pay out $60. That is just an example of some of the lineups you can make over at PrizePicks. Make your own lineups today for any sport. Just download the PrizePicks app, use the code HMA, and get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Joe Tippmann, he's a dog. Big fan of Joe. He gets a new deal from Darren Muji and company. What was your take on the Tippmann extension, Omari?
I love that. You and I called it after Brees got his deal. We said the next guy up should be Joe Tippmann. And again, it just makes sense. I believe the deal works out. I believe it was 4 years, $62 million. The final numbers were, and it makes him the 15th highest paid guard in the league. Yeah, he's just everything that you want. He's a former second-round pick. He's been durable. He can play. He's a team-first guy because he is a center. He was drafted as a center. He played center in college. But again, he moved over to guard once ABT got hurt for the betterment of the team. He could have just said, hey, listen, I really want to play center. I really want to cement myself here. But again, he's always available to the media, and you need to start to build around those type of guys. And I know, I made a tweet saying that, hey, that Muji has extended a lot of these guys. He's given out more extensions than the previous 2 GMs did it over a 10-year span. Now, I know that these aren't his players, but these are all players that we do think that the team should build around. So I absolutely loved it. You lock up, you have your 3 key offensive linemen. We're going back to the championship blueprint. You have your 3 offensive linemen. They're all 25 or younger. And I just think it was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer from a on-the-field performance and in the locker room presence.
It's kind of wild how the Jets offense is truly set up, regardless who the potential quarterback is a year from now. Like, the offensive line has 3 above average starters. Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall signed for the next couple of years. Mason Taylor, Sadiq, Omar Cooper Jr. Feels like we have the infrastructure for whoever the quarterback might end up being in 27.
Yeah, and this isn't just a short-term thing. I think that the infrastructure is there for long-term. I think right now you can get a 2-year runway with Geno, and then hopefully this can parlay into an 8-year window because, like you said, all of these guys are 27 or younger, and most of these guys are locked up. And again, you can you can upgrade at a lot of the spots, but and I even put this back to you. I can't even think of the last time the Jets have had this many young, talented offensive players that could be potentially locked up for a 5-year window. So I think for probably since that 2010, that Sanchez year with the talent that they had. And even then, you knew that wasn't going to be long term because a lot of those guys were veterans. I think that this is the best spot the Jets have been in probably since I've been a fan. I'm not sure if how would you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree. It just so much of it is coach and quarterback, and at least they're equipped to.
Yeah.
I don't want to say like get it right because you still got to get it right, but they're an attractive job for the next coach if Glenn can't figure it out. And quarterback wise, I mean, I'm not asking Geno Smith to do anything he hasn't done recently. Just be above average, be competent, and this team should have the makings of a real offense.
Yeah, and it's so funny that you say that because for the last 6 years, all we've wanted as fans is just marginal QB play. We've always felt that with marginal QB play, this team should have been at minimum on the in the hunt graphic come Thanksgiving time. And I think if you do get marginal QB play with this team, they're going to surprise a lot of people. But again, and again, just to go back to the Knicks parallel, we can say Leon Rose is Darren Muji. Again, he's brought in players that just all fit together. Instead of going superstar hunting like previous regimes wanted to do and most fans wanted to do, he decided to build a great team around his best player. So, you look at what Darren Muji's been able to do. The only thing that, like you said, he's gotten the talent in here. Now we have to see if it's the right coach because it's apples to oranges when you think about the NBA to the NFL. I think in the NBA you can get by on just being talent, and I don't think that the coaching is as important as it is in the NFL because I think in the NFL you're starting to see that you probably want a better coach. You probably need a better coach, probably more than you need, supreme talent. So that's going to be the differentiator. I do think that the talent level's been raised, but again, I think that we still have so many question marks at the coaches. But again, it's good to have talent. And I think that last year the team was devoid of talent. So in some of those 50-50 games, I think that the talent that they've added is going to be able to be the differentiator in some of those games. Hopefully those go in favor of the Jets coming up this year.
Breaking sports news on the Jake Asman Show.
Omari, some of the details from Joe Tippmann's contract are officially out there from Spot Track. 4 years, $62 million, the base value, $21.4 million guaranteed at signing, $13.5 million more next March. So Joe Tippmann can definitely buy that house that him and his wife were talking about they wanted to buy. $4.4 million of incentives, 3 years, $36 million is the true value of the deal. Cap hits, you see $3.8 million this year, 14.1 the following, 15.6 in 28, 2029, 17.6, 2030, 15.6. This is an incredibly reasonable deal for a guy who is still a young 25-year-old who I think has still not even played his best football of his career to this point.
I think that it's a phenomenal deal. I think that by the time we get to 2028, we're going to be saying that Joe Tippmann deal is a bargain. And that's what you want to do. The cap hit is very low in 2026. It kicks in, and that's going to put him right. I think he's going to be the 15th highest paid guard. And the way that most of us feel about Joe Tippmann, I think that he's going to outperform that contract. Hopefully the hope is that, he gets another deal because he's exceeded that. So again, the way Darren Muji has structured all of these deals, I think the way he's gone about the business being proactive, I love a proactive GM. I think that a lot of the times when you let these things linger on, it can become, a distraction in the locker room. Everything is getting done. We're going into training camp right now, and there's no, like we're fishing. I think that we're fishing for things that are wrong with the locker room, and everyone seems to be in good spirits. Now, again, when adversity starts to hit, that's really when you see. But you look at Geno, you look at even Breece Hall. Everybody wants Breece Hall to just take more of that leadership role, and he alluded to that. He and Garrett being on the leadership council, they're the youngest in the leadership rooms, but that goes a long way. When these guys are able to play free because they're secure. They can be a part of the leadership council. They can be in the community a little bit more because they know that they're going to be here. Gino even talked about investing into the community. So these are the things that you want to hear from a team. And I feel like in the past, there just wasn't enough. There wasn't much buy-in because there was just a lot of uncertainty and there just wasn't a commitment at all times between the front office and the players.
All right, Omari, let's get into the Brendan Sorsby situation. Here's a timeline of events. April 27th, the NCAA begins an investigation. Sorsby enters treatment for his gambling addiction. May 18th, Sorsby sues the NCAA after being ruled ineligible. May 19th, Texas Tech University petitions the NCAA for reinstatement. May 22nd through the 26th, the NCAA denies Texas Tech's reinstatement petition. Texas Tech appeals the NCAA decision. June 8th, Sorsby is granted a temporary injunction. June 15th, Sorsby to enter the NFL's supplemental draft. Your thoughts on where we are currently at right now, where all signs appear for Brendan Sorsby to be entering the supplemental draft, which will be held at some point in July?
Yeah, I think that this is the right move for Brendan Sorsby because it was going to be a huge distraction for him. They already had Big 12 schools saying that they weren't going to compete. They were going to forfeit games. So it was just way too much legal issues and off the field stuff for Sorsby to continue at Texas Tech. So I think that this is going to be the right move for him. And again, it's a quarterback, Jake, and it's always about, the next best thing with the quarterbacks. That's why sometimes unless you have a guy, the most popular guy from the fan base is going to be the backup quarterback because you're always looking for the next best thing, or you just with quarterbacks, it's always just like, well, if you don't have a guy, let's just keep throwing darts. Now, again, somebody's going to use a third rounder on Brendan Sorsby. For the Jets, I personally just don't think that it's a fit. The Jets are really they're going in the right direction. And we just talked about it, all the good things that they're doing. Like, they're signing their players. They got a lot of high character guys. Darren Muji's doing a tremendous job. And the only thing that's really left right now is to see if he can identify a quarterback. I don't think that Brendan Sorsby is the right quarterback for the Jets. Now, let's talk about the talent. I do see talent there. Now, again, he played at Cincinnati. Like the competition in that conference isn't going to, shock you. He had a, 61% completion percentage. He does make some good throws. And I understand why you can get the Caleb Williams or the Patrick Mahomes comparisons because he is going to drop down to sidearm a few or on some crossing routes. He is going to take a ton of chances. But again, he is not a finished product. So, and this is all due respect to people in the industry that feel that he has first round tape. Me personally, I did not see that. I look at the Utah game specifically. He's 11 for 33 against Utah. So anytime he played tougher competition, he did struggle. His completion percentage is already pretty low from where you want it to be for an NFL quarterback at 61%. Jake, that drops to 44% when he's moved off his second target. Okay. And I think that his completion percentage when he has to look to his left drops significantly as well too. He's sailed a lot of throws when he has to go off his first read, and his deep ball accuracy needs some work as well too. But again, if you told me that the Jets would take a swing in the fourth round, I would absolutely do it. I would absolutely, do it, or maybe even the fifth. But again, in terms of fit, I just don't like the fit with the off-field concerns, and I just don't think that this New York market. We've seen the New York market, spit up and chew out, swallow and chew up some of the guys with, no off-the-field issues. I mean, you just look at Sam Darnold. I truly believe the reason that the Jets, and I'm not going to be one of those, hindsight people that say that Sam should have stayed here. Sam was mentally shot as the quarterback of the New York Jets, and we thought that Sam had all the intangibles in the world. So I just don't think that the Jets are in the position to take that risk the same way I felt about Ty Simpson. So I think that he should go to a more stable situation with an organization that has a history of not only developing QBs, but rehabilitating the man.
I just think when you're the Jets and your coaching staff is coaching for their lives, you already have Klubnik. If you're going to now use another pick, put that quarterback in the QB room, I just don't see how everyone's on the same timeline to actually get Brendan Sorsby the development he needs to be successful. Then let's say if it doesn't work with Aaron Glenn, the next coaching staff comes in, like, how do they feel about Brendan Sorsby? I just think there's a lot of unknowns. I don't think the Jets are the team where it makes sense. I think a team like the Vikings or the Steelers, the Rams, even though they took Simpson, like just teams that have their coaching staffs in place, I just think that makes incredibly more sense than the Jets, who I think have done well positioning themselves to get their long-term answer at that position in the 27 draft.
Yeah, I'd even go further, Jake. The Baltimore Ravens. You know exactly what you have there with the Baltimore Ravens. I think the perfect fit would be Andy Reid. Andy Reid has rehabilitated a few quarterbacks, and you know that he has a soft spot because of the history in his own family. So the rehabilitating the man, Andy Reid has done that before. You look. I think Michael Vick is the most. I think is his most successful rehabilitation project. And I think that would be great for Brendan Sorsby, the man, and also Brendan Sorsby, the quarterback. But yeah, like you said, if the Jets are going to use any 2027 capital for a quarterback, I think they should use it on a veteran to where if anything, God forbid anything happens to Geno Smith and he's not able to go, and Cade Klubnik, you don't feel comfortable with throwing him into the fire, throw a day 3, a 2027 day 3 pick at a Will Levis, throw a day 3 2027 pick at a Mason Rudolph if they're going to go and bring in Brendan Sorsby, or throw it out of Spencer Rattler, who isn't going to be the guy anymore because I think New Orleans has pretty much given all their support to Tyler Shuck. I think I would like to see the Jets go in that route rather than bringing in a kid that's going to have to answer a bunch of questions, and rightfully so, about his off the field issues.
Hey, here's the deal. Just got no chance unless you click on that like button. And you got to make sure you subscribe to the Jake Asman Show. You don't, you can get the f*** out. Now let's go, Asmaniacs. We're built for this shit.